I was really thinking what to speak. Am I going just to read what was prepared to me by my team? And they were very good, but actually by thanking to the government of the Kingdom of Spain, to the city of Barcelona for hosting us at this marvelous event, and speaking about the climate changes and the culture, I decided to speak about something what really happened to my country, and what was the impact of the climate changes in the Balkans, in Balkan Peninsula, and in the southeastern Europe. Actually, 11 years ago, we were faced with catastrophic floods. These floods caused enormous material damage. Also, dozens of people lost their lives. And the material damage was even over 500 million euros. We needed a lot to recover from that, but what actually is a connection between these floods and the damage which happened and the culture? The one can ask me that. And I prefer to think in a way that actually all the damage which was made, speaking about the settlements, speaking about houses where people were living, was actually a result of breaking up with century-old traditions in my country. Mostly, all the damage was made in the flooding areas where for centuries people were not constructing houses. For two reasons. The first one, because there was a possibility of flood, obviously, and the second one, flooding areas are always the most fertile areas. And during the ancient period, during the history, people were much wiser than we are. They were thinking about the future generations. And they wanted to save as much as possible these fertile lands for their kids. Then kids arrive in the time of global fast development. They were not thinking about the future generations. They were more or less selfish. They started constructing houses in the areas which were dedicated to farming and to floods, which can happen sometimes. And that's actually what happened to us. So what we need to do, of course, that we need to adopt the acts in our parliaments, that we need the action plans, how to preserve the tangible cultural heritage together with everything what we are having as living areas. But it is very important. That's what I was listening when the key speaker was talking. Very, very important part of the culture is the oral transmission from previous generations to new generations. For centuries during the Ottoman rule over Serbia, illiteracy was very common. 99% of the people couldn't read, neither write. But orally, they were transmitting all the culture to their kids. And today, that's what we are enjoying. And speaking about the climate changes, we are faced in this way, the dear colleagues from the other parts of the world, in the other ways. But what we need to do is just to listen to the voice of our ancestors and to see what they were doing in some similar situations. It doesn't mean that we are going to have 100% success, but more than 50% I'm sure that we are going to have. Thank you very much for the answer. Balkan area is a conflict area for centuries. It is not only during the past decades. But I would particularly like to speak about something what is going on in my country on the protection of the heritage, especially during the crisis, and the crises which are still ongoing after the armed conflicts. So next year, Serbia will mark 20 years since inscription of 4 monuments for medieval churches and monasteries on the territory of Kosovo and Metohija on UNESCO World Heritage List in danger. So next year is going to be 20 years since the inscription of these 4 monuments on the list of the monuments in danger. Since 1999, over 10,000 icons and liturgical objects on Kosovo and Metohija were totally destroyed or desecrated. 150 churches and monasteries, many of them coming from the late 12th, 13th, 14th century. They were destroyed. 122 graveyards, cemeteries, were totally destroyed. Only in March, in 2 days of March 2004, 34 churches and monasteries were totally burned, desecrated, and ruined. And why am I speaking about this? Culture sometimes can be a trigger for the war actions. All of us sitting here are remembering of the horrible pictures of destroying of Buddha's statues in Afghanistan. And that was the trigger to begin the war. In some other cases, cultural heritage was the destruction of cultural heritage was the final result of some conflicts. Nobody was speaking so loud about everything what happened to the cultural heritage in Iraq, the cradle of civilization. Nobody was speaking about the cultural heritage destroyed in Syria, also one of the milestones of the world civilization. All the acts I mentioned are not only attacks on physical structures. They are attacks on history, they are attacks on identity, they are attacks on cultural continuity. And these attacks are still happening from day to day. And in this light, there is something what I must share with you as a kind of a horrible example, something that will raise awareness. That is a model of cultural side, kulturocid, which has also been mentioned during the last days. And I would like just to give a short picture how it looks like. We have 3 steps. The first step is destruction of culture. It is physical destruction, prohibitions, whatever. And that is only a prelude to genocide and to ethnical cleansing. So the first step, destruction of culture. The second step, that's falsification of history, erasure of culture. It is having as a result cultural cleansing. And the third step is stealing the victim's culture. That's historical cleansing. After all these 3 steps, what you have a perfect crime. Sometimes, and unfortunately, in my part of the world, in my region, culture used to be one of the main reasons for conflicts. And this was the battle to the end. In our experience, these 3 steps occurred twice only in 20th century. First, during the Second World War, by Nazi regimes, both German Nazis, and I will give you the clear example, on April the 6th, 1941, my capital, Belgrade, was attacked without the announcement of war. One of the main targets was the National Library. During the trial to the commander of this attack, that was Nazi German General Alexander von Lehr, he said that the bombardment and destruction of the National Library of Serbia was ordered directly by Adolf Hitler. And he quoted him. He said, we need to destroy the National Library of Serbia because it is the place preserving the documents of the crucial importance for the national and cultural identity of Serbian people. What they've done, they destroyed hundreds of thousands of books, dozens of thousands of manuscripts, and over 1,300 rulers, our kings, emperors, princes, charters from the Middle Age. So, during the Second World War, it wasn't just done by German Nazis. It was also done by the independent state of Croatia. I would like to share with you one very important data. The only one example in the history of Europe, and I firmly believe in the history of the world, that one state structure has organized the special office. It was the name, the Office for the Destruction of the Christian Orthodox Churches and Monasteries. It was a state body. And they destroyed over 85% of centuries-old cultural heritage belonging to the Serbian Orthodox community there. The second experience we were facing with during the dissolution and the breakup of Yugoslavia. And everything what happened then, unfortunately, still is happening in our southern province of Kosovo and Metohija. And if I may end with words that heritage is not just what we inherit. It is a basis of preservation of identity. It is the vital resource for our resilience in the future. And sorry for taking a lot of your time, but I wanted to share with you these 3 steps because at the end, what remains is a culture. Sometimes the one's aim is totally to destroy some culture because they are thinking that in such a way they are going to completely defeat the enemy.